Skipped my own sister's wedding because her fiancé said he loved me. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My sister got married without me, and half our family still tells that story like I woke up jealous and chose violence. What they leave out is that 48 hours before Natalie walked down the aisle, her fiancé stood with me in a hotel service hallway that smelled like bleach and roses and said, very quietly, "I think I'm marrying the wrong sister." I can still hear the ice in my own voice when I answered, "Then don't marry either of us." By the time the ceremony happened, my phone was full of messages calling me selfish, unstable, dramatic. My mother left a voicemail asking how I could do this to Natalie at the worst possible moment. One cousin posted a smiling church photo with the caption, "Family is messy, but love wins," which felt almost funny considering the groom had tried to make me part of his private exit plan 2 nights earlier. I was 29, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus, worked for a pediatric clinic doing patient coordination, and was the person everyone called reliable when they needed airport pickups, spreadsheet help, last-minute errands, or someone to sit with an anxious relative in the ER. In my family, dependable was useful, but it wasn't glamorous. Natalie was the polished one. She sold luxury homes, wore cream-colored blazers without spilling on them, and could turn a dinner reservation into a social event. When she got engaged to Mark, everybody said the same thing, perfect match. Maybe that was why nobody wanted the truth once it threatened the picture. The official version became that I abandoned my own sister over some misunderstanding and then tried to justify it. What actually happened was uglier, slower, and humiliating in a way I still struggle to explain without sounding like I'm making myself the center of her tragedy. I never wanted that role. I wanted one quiet conversation, one honest admission, one chance to keep my sister from marrying a man who was already building lies around her. Instead, I became the easiest person to blame. And the first lie Mark told about me was still spreading. Natalie and I grew up in the same house, but learned different survival skills. She learned early that being impressive kept the temperature in the room stable. Good grades, perfect hair, smiling through stress, saying the right thing in front of other people. I learned how to read a pause before it became a fight. If our mother was tense before a holiday, I cooked. If relatives were coming over, I cleaned. Natalie performed ease. I managed fallout. That difference followed us into adulthood. She used to joke, "Sophia is the family's emergency contact," and everyone laughed because it was true. If something went wrong, I handled it. If something needed to look beautiful, Natalie did. There was love between us, but it had old seams in it. She was 3 years older and always a little ahead. First boyfriend, first apartment, first big paycheck, first ring. Around her, I felt both trusted and invisible. When she met Mark, even I understood the appeal. He was handsome in a contained way, not flashy. He listened when people spoke. He brought my mother flowers. He remembered Aunt Denise's knee surgery. At family dinners, he loaded plates, laughed at the right volume. If he and Natalie ever disagreed, it never showed. They looked like one of those couples strangers assume must have a shared calendar and a spotless future. The first year, I liked him. I actually hate admitting that now. There were small things I ignored because they were easy to file under charm. He texted me once after Christmas to say, "Thanks for making tonight less tense. You're the only one who notices everything." Another time, after Natalie snapped at a waitress during a bridal expo weekend, he murmured while she was in the restroom, "You're calmer than everyone else in this family." I remember laughing it off. Compliments from future in-laws happen. The problem was that in my family, image mattered more than context. If something looked fine from the outside, you were expected to protect it. Natalie loved planning that wedding like it proved her life had landed exactly where she wanted. The venue was an old stone church, the reception was at a renovated hotel downtown, and every detail was curated to death. Then Mark started looking at me like he was waiting for a private answer. The confession happened on a Thursday night after Natalie's bridal shower cleanup. Most people had already left. The event room smelled like vanilla candles, champagne, and damp hydrangeas. I was stacking gifts near the door while Natalie rode with our mother to drop centerpieces at the hotel. Mark had volunteered to help carry boxes to the service elevator because, as my aunt put it, "He's such a good one." I remember actually agreeing. He was quiet in the hallway. Not nervous exactly, just too focused. I asked if he could grab the garment bags from the coat room, and instead of moving, he said my name in that careful tone people use before announcing a death. Sophia. I looked up. What? He rubbed his thumb against the side of a gift box. I need to tell you something before Saturday. I thought someone was sick. I actually felt my stomach brace for bad family news. Then he said, I can't stop thinking about you. For 1 second, my brain refused to sort the words. It was like hearing a sentence in the wrong language and still understanding it. I laughed because I thought he had to be panicking. You're stressed. Don't do this. I'm not stressed, he said. I'm being honest for the first time. I set down the ribbon bag, so hard tissue paper spilled onto the floor. Mark, she should be with someone who worships her version of the world, he said. That's not me. And you think that someone is me? I asked. He stepped closer, not touching me, which somehow made it worse. I think I met the wrong sister first. I told him to stop. I told him whatever fantasy he was having needed to stay in his own head. He said, You always act like I'm a stranger. I said, Because you are. Then he did the thing that turned my disgust into fear. He looked relieved, like finally saying it had solved something for him. I had to know if there was any chance, he said. There isn't, I snapped. And if you mean a word of this, you do not marry Natalie. His face changed then, just for a second, like I had broken the script he expected. When I pushed past him toward the elevator, he said something that made my blood go cold. You're not going to tell her until you calm down. I drove home that night with the windows down even though it was too cold, like air alone could erase what had happened. At the first red light, I checked my phone, half expecting an apology. Nothing. Took off my makeup, stood in my kitchen staring at a magnet on my fridge, and tried to reason with myself. Weddings make people weird. He was spiraling. Maybe he wanted out and grabbed the nearest emotional fire exit. Maybe he didn't mean love. Maybe he meant comfort, or fantasy, or some stupid pre-marriage panic that would burn off by morning. My phone buzzed. Mark, I'm sorry for saying it badly. Then another. Mark, I've been trying not to say it for months. Then another. Mark, please don't tell Natalie until we talk. I sat on the edge of my bed so fast I nearly dropped the phone. Having your worst interpretation confirmed in 3 neat text bubbles is sickening. He wasn't confused. He wasn't drunk. He was managing fallout. I typed, delete my number. He replied almost immediately. You know that's not the point. I called Julia because she was the one person who could hear something ugly without dressing it up. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. Someone better be dead. I think my sister's fiancé just confessed he's in love with me. There was a long silence. Then, start over, slowly, and do not protect anyone. So I told her everything. The hallway, the wording, the texts. Julia did what people who love you should do in a crisis. She asked precise questions instead of offering movie lines. Did he touch you? No. Had he ever texted like that before? Not exactly. Did I have screenshots? Yes. Was I safe? Probably. Was I planning to tell Natalie? I didn't know. You do know, she said. You're just afraid of what telling her costs. She was right, and that was the problem. Natalie was already texting me seating chart questions and photos of monogrammed cocktail napkins, like we were still standing in normal life. Every message from her made my chest hurt. By morning, I had slept maybe 90 minutes and convinced myself of one thing only. If I said this wrong, I would become the story instead of the warning. Then Mark sent a photo that made my hands go numb. It was a picture of Natalie asleep on his shoulder in the passenger seat, mouth slightly open, veil samples in her lap. No caption, just the image. The message under it came 30 seconds later. She had a hard day. Please don't blow up her life because I was honest with you. I stared at the screen until anger cut through the nausea. He was already framing himself as vulnerable. Not a man who had ambushed his fiancée's sister, but a truth-teller asking for compassion. That afternoon, I drove to Natalie's townhouse, intending to tell her anyway. I practiced the first sentence in the car. There's something I need to tell you about Mark. No, that sounded vague and dramatic. Mark said something inappropriate to me. Too soft. Mark told me he has feelings for me. Too clinical. Every version felt wrong. When she opened the door, she threw her arms around me, so my purse slipped off my shoulder. Thank God you're here, she said. Mom's spiraling about the welcome bags. Inside, ribbon and garment bags covered every flat surface. Natalie was barefoot, flushed, and bright with adrenaline. She shoved a clipboard into my hand. Can you check the hotel room assignments? Mark keeps saying he'll help, but he's with the florist. The sound of his name nearly made me flinch. We sat on the floor surrounded by candles and menus. Natalie leaned against the sofa and looked younger, almost like the sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I know I've been insane, she said, smiling without opening her eyes. But I'm really happy, sophomore. Like, scary happy. That sentence broke my momentum. I asked carefully, are you? She opened her eyes. What does that mean? Nothing. You just seem stressed. Everyone's stressed before weddings, she said. Then she laughed and nudged my knee. Don't give me your clinic voice. I'm fine. I almost said it then. I felt the words rise. But our mother walked in carrying shoe boxes and immediately started talking about rehearsal timing, photos, weather, and whether I had picked up Natalie's dry cleaning. The room filled with motion, and truth got shoved aside. When I left, Natalie hugged me again and whispered, please don't let anything go wrong. In the driveway, my phone lit up with Mark's name again. This time he called instead of texting. I should have let it ring out. Instead, I answered because some part of me still believed adults could be shamed into decency. What do you want? I said, I want you to stop acting like I threatened you. You cornered me and confessed feelings for me 2 days before my sister's wedding. He exhaled like I was being difficult. I said I was confused. No, you didn't. I'm saying it now. That was the moment I understood this wasn't panic. It was strategy. He wasn't trying to fix what he'd done. He was rewriting the original file before anyone else could read it. He lowered his voice. Natalie is exhausted. She's under pressure. If you dump this on her now, she'll hear the ugliest version possible. The ugliest version is the one where you said it. I was talking about connection, he said. About how easy it is to talk to you. I actually laughed. You told me you met the wrong sister. He went quiet for half a beat, then said, you know that's not what I meant. Gaslighting sounds theatrical until you hear it in a calm voice from someone who knows exactly what happened. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't denying the conversation existed. He was making my memory sound hysterical compared to his reasonableness. Before hanging up, he added, Natalie already thinks you've been distant. Don't make this bigger. That line bothered me because it suggested groundwork. The next morning at brunch with out-of-town relatives, I saw what he meant. He pulled out my chair, touched my shoulder in passing like nothing had happened, and made a joke to my mother about me, vanishing whenever emotions get intense. Everyone laughed. Natalie looked at me across the table and said, he's not wrong. You've been weird all week. Mark gave a small apologetic smile, the kind men use when they want credit for tolerating a woman's mood. Wedding stress hits everybody differently. I wanted to throw something at him. Instead, I said, I'm fine. Natalie tilted her head. Then why do you keep acting like I did something to you? Because saying the truth in front of everyone would have detonated the room, and Mark knew it. By dessert, he had already started building the version where I was unstable. After that brunch, the entire wedding weekend tilted against me by tiny degrees. Nothing dramatic at first, just enough to make me feel watched. Natalie would stop talking when I entered a room. My mother asked twice if I was having some kind of personal issue that needed to be dealt with before Saturday. One cousin I barely liked in the first place told me, this is not the time to make things about yourself, even though I had not said a single thing to her. That was the terrifying part. Mark was planting impressions without needing a full accusation. On Friday afternoon, we were stuffing welcome bags at the hotel ballroom. Natalie handed me tissue paper without looking at me. Are you mad at Mark? The question came so casually, I almost answered too quickly. What? He said he thinks you don't like him anymore. My throat tightened. That's what he said. Natalie finally looked up. Why are you repeating everything like I'm cross-examining you? I put down the ribbon spool before my hands exposed how badly they were shaking. Did he say why? She shrugged. He said maybe he offended you when he told you you've seemed checked out lately. The precision of that lie made me cold. He wasn't inventing something huge. He was replacing the real conversation with a smaller, more believable one. I said, Natalie, if Mark told you he had a weird conversation with me, I need you to know. My mother cut in from across the table. Sophia, can you focus? These bags need to be downstairs in 20 minutes. Natalie sighed, already frustrated. See? This is what I mean. Every time I try to talk to you, you get intense. There it was. My silence had turned into evidence against me. Later, in the hotel restroom, I locked myself in a stall and texted Julia everything. She replied instantly. He's preloading her against you. Screenshot everything. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. While I was reading that, another text came in from Mark. Mark, if you tell her now, she'll think you're trying to ruin the wedding. Then, as if he wanted to prove how well he understood the trap he'd built. Mark, and honestly, can you blame her? I took the screenshot with trembling fingers. For the first time, I realized he had done this before in smaller ways. Once I started looking backward instead of forward, the pattern was impossible to miss. There had been the weekend Natalie went to tour venues with our mother, and I stayed home sick. Mark had texted, "Need anything dropped off?" I'd assumed he was being polite until I scrolled further and found the follow-up. "You always take care of everyone else. Who takes care of you?" At the time I had answered with a thumbs up and ignored it. Now it read like a test balloon. Then there was my birthday dinner in March. Natalie had been 20 minutes late because of a client, and Mark arrived first carrying flowers from both of us. When I said he didn't need to do that, he smiled and said, "Someone should show up on time for you." I remembered laughing because Aunt Denise immediately changed the subject. At the time, I thought she was just being her sharp self. Now I wondered what she had heard in his tone. I went through months of texts. Most were harmless on paper, which made them more disturbing. Little bids for private intimacy hidden inside normal family logistics. Checking whether I got home safe after dinners Natalie also attended. Sending me photos of a book I'd mentioned, not to the group chat, but directly. Once, after an argument Natalie had with our mother, he texted, "She thinks being right is the same thing as being kind. You don't." Another time, "Sometimes I think you're the only person in this family who sees me clearly." Nothing explicit. Nothing you could hand to a stranger and say, "See?" Predatory. But laid out together, it felt like he had been building a private side channel while making sure every message stayed deniable. I called Aunt Denise because she was the only person old enough to be ignored and sharp enough to notice anyway. I expected caution. Instead, after I read a few texts aloud, she said, "Honey, that man has been auditioning you for months." I sat on my kitchen floor with my laptop open and started making a timeline. Dates, screenshots, locations, what he said when Natalie was absent, what changed after I rejected him. The list grew uglier fast. Then I found a deleted voicemail transcript from 3 weeks earlier I had never fully listened to. And that was when his careful mask stopped looking accidental. The voicemail had come in at 11:08 p.m. After a family cookout, I left early because I had work the next morning. I must have skimmed it and forgotten, because the audio itself was 22 seconds. Mark sounded tired, maybe tipsy, but deliberate. "Hey, no need to call back. I just wanted to say, sometimes I think you disappearing is the only thing keeping me decent." Then a pause. A sharp inhale. Forget I said that. At the time, I had probably filed it under late-night weirdness and moved on. Now it clicked into place beside everything else like the missing corner of a puzzle. Julia came over with coffee, her laptop, and the kind of ruthless calm I envy. We exported screenshots. We backed up the voicemail. She showed me how to recover deleted text previews from Cloud Sync, because I had a habit of removing uncomfortable messages instead of preserving them. That was how we recovered one from 6 weeks earlier. Mark, you ever wonder how different things would be if timing were different? Another from after the bridal expo. Mark, talking to you feels too easy. Then, after I didn't respond. Mark, ignore me. Bad night. Julia read them, jaw tight. He built a trail that sounds soft until you line it up. I added timestamps from the bridal shower, including the 12:14 a.m. messages. Aunt Denise sent me one more piece without commentary. A photo she had taken at my birthday dinner where Mark was looking at me while Natalie spoke. I hated how obvious it seemed once I knew to see it. Still, proof is a strange thing in families. You can have screenshots, dates, and a man practically narrating his own emotional affair, and people will still ask whether you misread his tone because your existence is less convenient than their plans. I drafted a message to Natalie at least 10 times. "Can we talk privately tonight?" Serious. Delete. "I need to show you something about Mark." Delete. "He said something to me, and I have evidence." Delete. The problem wasn't the truth. It was that once I sent it, there would be no controlled version anymore. She would either believe me and collapse, or not believe me, and I would lose her anyway. While I was still staring at the blinking cursor, Mark called again. This time, he sounded like he already knew I had the receipts. I put him on speaker. "Sophia," he said, voice low and urgent. We need to act like adults. Julia mouthed oh and leaned closer. What adults do, I said, is not confess love to their fiancé's sister. He ignored that. Natalie is already fragile. If you send her a pile of selective screenshots without context, you're going to traumatize her. Selective. The word impressed me. I'm not protecting you, I said. You think this is about me? I know it is. He exhaled. You've always needed to be the moral one. That landed because it was designed to. Mark's favorite move was taking your best instinct and reframing it as vanity. Reliability became control. Honesty became self-righteousness. Boundaries became drama. Then he changed tactics. Look, I said something I shouldn't have. I was overwhelmed. You shut it down. Fine. I accepted that. No, you started lying. I started containing damage. Julia actually whispered, Jesus. He kept going. If Natalie asks, I'll tell her I crossed a line emotionally. I can own that. But if you dump months of weirdly interpreted texts on her tonight, you're not helping her. You're trying to punish me. There it was, partial admission wrapped around accusation. Before I could answer, he said, almost gently, you know she'll ask why you never told her sooner. That was the blade. Not whether he was guilty, whether my delay made me complicit. He knew exactly where my shame lived. An hour later, at the rehearsal dinner, he acted like the world's most considerate fiancé. He toasted Natalie's patience, thanked both families, squeezed my mother's shoulder, and kissed my sister's temple while she laughed. I stood near the back of the room with a club soda, feeling like I had entered a play where only I had read the wrong script. Aunt Denise found me and said, your face is too honest. Step outside. We stood near the hotel loading dock under yellow security lights while I told her about the call. She listened, then said the simplest, hardest thing anyone had said all week. You are not required to donate your credibility to a liar. I looked back through the glass doors at Natalie smiling beside him, radiant and doomed by ignorance. Then Mark stepped outside and said something that erased my last bit of hesitation. He didn't even pretend to be surprised Aunt Denise was there. He looked at both of us and said, if Sophia skips tomorrow, Natalie will never forgive her. Not if she tells the truth. Not if she lies. If she skips. He was no longer trying to stop disclosure. He was trying to force my body into the wedding machinery so my presence could certify his innocence. Aunt Denise folded her arms. That sounds like a you problem. Mark gave her a polite smile that never reached his eyes. I'm trying to keep this family intact. No, I said quietly. You're trying to keep your timeline. For the first time, his composure cracked. You are not blowing this up because of one conversation. One conversation? I laughed, stunned. You built a private channel to me for months. He stepped closer, voice dropping. And you answered. You never shut me down until Thursday. That was such a clean manipulator's move that even Aunt Denise inhaled sharply. He was turning politeness into participation, my normal family replies into encouragement, my delay into consent. I suddenly saw the future he was betting on. Natalie crying, our mother outraged, everyone focusing on my response patterns instead of his pursuit. I said, I'm not coming tomorrow. His face emptied. Don't do that. I'm done helping you hide. He took one more shot. If you cared about Natalie at all, you'd get through the day and handle this after. Aunt Denise answered before I could. If you cared about Natalie, there wouldn't be anything to handle. Back in my room, I typed the message to my sister with hands that felt detached from me. I can't attend tomorrow. Something happened with Mark that makes it impossible for me to stand beside you and pretend. I need to talk to you privately before the ceremony. Please. She replied in under a minute. What the hell does that mean? Then, did Mom put you up to some dramatic intervention? Then, if this is anxiety, take something and come sleep here. I started typing, deleting, typing again. Finally I sent, I have screenshots. I'll show you if you meet me alone. 3 minutes passed. 5. 10. Then my phone rang, and Natalie was screaming through tears. How dare you? Those were the first words I could make out. I stepped into the hotel bathroom and locked the door while she sobbed on the other end. He told me you've been acting strange and sending him mixed signals for months, and I defended you. I felt the room sway. Natalie, that is not what happened. Then why do you have screenshots? She shouted. Why are you collecting things? Why didn't you tell me immediately if he said something so horrible? Because I froze. Because I was trying not to detonate your wedding from the inside. Because women are taught that timing matters more than violation if the room is dressed beautifully enough. Instead, I said, "Meet me downstairs. No one else. I'll show you everything." She refused. "I'm not leaving my room because you've decided to have a breakdown." Then she hung up. I did not sleep. At 6 in the morning, my mother pounded on my hotel door. Her mascara was already done. "Natalie says you're trying to ruin this wedding because you're upset about something Mark supposedly said." Supposedly? She is devastated. My mother's voice shook with fury, not concern. "Whatever jealousy issue this is, handle it after today." I laughed once, a sound even I didn't recognize. Jealousy. Sophia, enough. That was the moment something inside me cooled off. If they needed me to play the unstable sister to preserve the production, then my tears were wasted anyway. I forwarded every screenshot, voicemail transcript, and recovered message to Natalie, copied myself, and copied Aunt Denise. Subject line, "Read before you marry him." Then I turned off my phone. I left the hotel through the side entrance in yesterday's dress, got in my car, and drove 20 minutes to Julia's apartment. Halfway there, my phone buzzed over and over from the passenger seat like a trapped insect. I didn't look until I was parked. 32 missed calls. 12 from Natalie. 7 from my mother. 3 from Mark. 1 voicemail from Aunt Denise. I played hers first. Aunt Denise said, "He slipped in front of everybody, and the wedding stopped." By the time I called her back, the church was apparently in open chaos. Natalie had opened the email while hair and makeup were finishing. At first, she called the screenshots out of context. Then she played the voicemail. According to Aunt Denise, the room went dead quiet. My mother tried to say stress made people say odd things. Mark tried to grab the phone from Natalie's hand. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 came when Natalie demanded, in front of her maid of honor, our mother, and 2 makeup artists who absolutely did not deserve front row seats to family collapse. "Did you tell my sister you loved her?" Instead of saying no, he said, "That's not a fair way to phrase it." Sometimes a person destroys himself with grammar. Natalie apparently stared at him for several seconds, then asked for his phone. He refused. Aunt Denise, who had arrived after my email and decided subtlety was no longer useful, told him, "Refusing now is a confession with posture." One of the makeup artists quietly left the room, which I still think was wise. Natalie found out about more than me in the next 20 minutes. Not cheating exactly, not some hidden second family, but a long habit of emotional outsourcing. There were old messages with an ex he called during fights. Flirty late-night exchanges with a coworker he claimed was just easy to talk to. Half-intimate, deniable threads everywhere, each one stopping just short of explicit betrayal. He wasn't a man who slipped once. He was a man who fed off private female attention and called it honesty whenever he got caught. The ceremony was delayed, then canceled. Guests were told there had been a family emergency, which, to be fair, was the cleanest true statement anyone had made all weekend. I expected relief to hit when the wedding stopped. Instead, I felt sick. I had still become the center of Natalie's humiliation. People were still whispering my name in a church parking lot while I sat 3 miles away in Julia's kitchen wearing yesterday's mascara. Truth did not feel victorious. It felt expensive. Then Natalie sent me her first text since reading everything. Her next text made the whole disaster feel even more personal. The week after the canceled wedding felt like surviving an explosion after the sound had already passed. Some relatives called to apologize in language so cautious it barely qualified. Others never contacted me at all, which honestly told me everything I needed to know about how much peace they expected women to purchase with silence. My mother sent one long message saying she was grieving the way this surfaced, which was almost impressive in its refusal to grieve what had actually happened. I did not answer. Natalie and I didn't speak for 9 days. On the 10th, she asked if I would meet her at Aunt Denise's house. Neutral ground, apparently. I almost said no because my body still tightened at unknown conversations, but Denise told me, boundaries and avoidance are cousins, not twins. So I went. Natalie looked wrecked in a plain gray sweater, no makeup, engagement ring gone. For the first 5 minutes, we talked around the weather like strangers in an elevator. Then she said, I read everything again when I could hear myself think. I waited. She twisted a tissue in her hands. I'm not ready to talk about him without wanting to throw up. But I am ready to say I made you carry the cost of my denial. That was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from her. And because it was Natalie, it was real. I told her I should have said something sooner. She said, maybe. But I also made it impossible to tell me anything ugly once the wedding became my whole personality. We both laughed at that, which turned into tears so fast it gave me emotional whiplash. I did not move back into full sister mode overnight. Neither did she. Healing was smaller than that. Coffee once a week. No wedding talk unless she started it. No relaying messages from our mother. No apologizing for protecting myself. Julia helped me block Mark everywhere after he emailed a 5-paragraph note about mutual misunderstanding. Aunt Denise helped me write a 2-sentence response for any relative fishing for drama. I told the truth. I won't discuss details further. For the first time in my life, not explaining myself felt less cruel than over-explaining. Then Natalie handed me something across Denise's table that finally made my anger settle into clarity. It was the printed program from the wedding that never happened. My name was still there under bridesmaid, in script so elegant it almost looked like another woman's life. Natalie tapped it once and said, I kept thinking this was the version of us I had to protect. The pretty one, even when it was killing us. I took the paper but didn't answer right away. Outside, Aunt Denise was watering tomato plants in old gardening gloves, and the late afternoon sun made everything look softer than it had any right to. I remember thinking that healing never arrives with the production value people promise. It shows up in plain rooms, swollen eyes, careful sentences, and the first day you notice your shoulders aren't clenched. Natalie and I are not magically closer now. Our mother still hates that the wedding was canceled more than she hates why. Some relatives still think I should have handled it privately, as if there is a private way to expose a public lie wrapped around a marriage license. Mark emailed twice more, then stopped when nobody answered. Last I heard, he was telling people he got cold feet and family interference finished the job. Liars always prefer vague nouns. What changed was me. I used to think loyalty meant absorbing discomfort quietly so other people could keep their milestones intact. I thought being good meant being useful, calm, easy to place in the family machinery. What I learned is that peace built on your silence is not peace. It is consent with better lighting. If anyone reading this is stuck inside a situation where telling the truth will make you look like the villain at first, here is the practical thing I wish someone had drilled into me earlier. Document everything before you confront anyone who benefits from controlling the narrative. Save the texts. Screenshot the timestamps. Forward the voicemail. Truth matters, but evidence survives panic better than memory does. And the hopeful thing is smaller. A month ago, Natalie came over to my apartment in sweatpants, ate takeout on my couch, and asked if we could start being honest before we start being polished. I said yes. That felt more sacred than any church aisle ever could.